Hi, my name is Janet Molbeck. I'm the executive director of Interweave. We're a small nonprofit here in New Jersey working to support spirituality for daily living, an integrated spirituality that nurtures wellness, the common good, and your spiritual life. Each year, we have a telethon. It's a way of keeping that work going. If you didn't have a chance to tune in, we hope you'll take advantage of this second opportunity. We want to thank you for supporting our work with 12 wonderful conversations about nurturing hope through prayer and practice, art and action. Thank you in advance for being there for Interweave and for the spiritual life in raising up the importance of hope. What we say here at Interweave is, let hope live in you. Thank you. Happy holiday. Now, Moya, because I am a little tired, I know you deeply well, but I'm going to give you a formal introduction to make sure I don't give uh, short shrift. Is that the way you say it to your quite impressive resume? We welcome Moya Keating, who is our Board of Trustee president, to the circle. She's a spiritual director, a grief counselor, a hospice chaplain. Moya embraces her role as spiritual elder, something you're going to hear her talk about in this hour. She loves, she really enjoys, takes pleasure, I think, in her craft and her ministry of spiritual direction, grief counseling, and supporting a soulful community, of which, by the way, Interweave is very grateful to be a part of. Interweave perfectly aligned, she says, with what inspires her, fostering expansion, nurturing, and a joyful blend of learning and spirituality. Welcome, Moya Keating. Um, Here we are. And by the way, you're the only person I'm going to have done this with, Moya. Look, you're going to see my
Ooh,
shirt.
I was just thinking about that tree and how it's been our kind of symbol forever. And it's just continues to, I don't know, really speak about how our roots are in the ground and our branches reaching out. And it still very much represents interweave.
It
It's
really does. And it was designed by Jean Stuffelbeam, who was an interweaver, founding member, one of the founding members of Interweave, um, along with Bob Morris in 1980. And there from the beginning. And Jean designed that beautiful logo for us. I don't think it was right away. It might have been a few years later, but boy, has that continued to say volumes about who we are,
right. And the books that have come out recently, The Secret Life of Trees,
right?
that the world, the things that happen in the unseen underground are, um, you know, incredible. That trees are not individuals; they're a community. The trees are families. The trees take care of each other. If a tree gets sick, the roots send out the nutrients that they need. All of this stuff, the that that we do for each other in Interweave. We're there for each other. We're a community. So yeah, awesome. Love
The
it.
trees are showing us the way. The trees definitely are still showing us the way. um, so Moya, you are here in this 10th hour, as Carl clarified for me, to talk about nurturing hope. We've been talking about nurturing hope all day. And right now, we're going to talk about nurturing hope through the art of being an elder.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you. Something I'm very very
Passionate
passionate about being an elder.
So
So, so
tell
what
us why are you drawn to this? I'm going to say it's a ministry. It's a way of life. We just talked about the artist's way. Maybe you can talk to us about the elder's way.
right. So, I know in many of the areas that I work in, there's a lot of feeling people are expressing of hopelessness, that there's nothing I do matters anyway. Um, I have no power over this, so why should I worry about it? I don't really feel like anything I do makes a difference. And it's unique. I mean, I think this feeling of hopelessness has become um, pervasive in many ways. And it's like putting on, cement sneakers, like you can't move, you can't see a way forward. And I think that taking on the role of the elder all of a sudden creates a, a place to move from. So I think of the elder coming to being an elder is a threshold moment, is kind of a standing on the mountaintop moment where you're able to look back and see, where you've been and how you've gotten here, and stand on the ground and with the possibility of stepping forward, a threshold moment. Um,
Did,
but
did- can you tell us about your threshold moment? Did you have a threshold moment that you knew that you had crossed over into elderhood?
well, I would say uh, that it's about this, uh, confronting this sense of hopelessness with, it is just my temperament to to be the cup half full kind of person. But elderhood is much more than that. It's a choice to take on the belief that experiences matter, that stories matter, that ritual matters, that the things that the elder can hold is in fact the way forward in a world that can feel the obstacles are impenetrable. So threshold moment, my personal threshold moment. I think I want to remind, as I'm describing elderhood, remind us that it's not about age. It's about it's about taking on the responsibility of this stance, this way of being in the world, of
Right.
being a witness, being the keeper of traditions, whatever, however it is for the each individual. But so I think I've been working with this notion of elder for a very long time, before I was even considered numerically an elder. I think it suits my way of being.
Mhm.
Yeah, good question.
So what are the earmarks of this thing called elderhood? Um, how would you how would we recognize it in ourselves or in another?
Well, there's a little personal mantra I have adopted recently, and it's really been helpful for me. And it comes from a spiritual that from the 60s and the civil rights movement, and it is just this, simply this. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. And it helps me. And if I ever find myself at a loss of words when you know, in conversations with, so many of the trials that we are all experiencing, that line, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome, it becomes my regrounding. But that doesn't mean a kind of optimism, like, oh, everything's going to be fine. Because the elder is the one who knows that in this life there is loss, there is disappointment, there are dreams that don't come true, there is, you know, all the things that we're experiencing. Turn on or turn off the news, or even, just what's in a full life, all the things that are in a full life. So it's not a kind of optimism. It's that deep in my heart, I do believe, deep in my experience, I know that there is grief and loss always in this life. That's what the elder knows. And at the same time is able to hold the paradox that within that is a true, deeply felt gratitude for this life in the midst of everything that makes a life full. So holding both grief and loss and gratitude and hope, along with gratitude is hope. Yeah,
To two seemingly diametrically opposed realities
right,
at the same time.
right.
Kind
But
of
it's a
like the
commitment to
that
walking.
sounds like the description of genius, right? Wow. It's a commitment. Tell me more about that.
So I would say the first one of the primary commitments is to spiritual practice, as just as Carl and I were briefly discussing before. Spiritual practice. All right. So, as you said in the introduction, I'm a spiritual director. And actually, I don't ask this question as much as I used to. But when I first started, I would say to people, "Well, what do you do for your spiritual practice? What is your spiritual practice?" And people would say, "Oh, well, I read sacred text. I pray, I meditate, I chant." And by the time they listed the things that they're doing for their spiritual practice, I'm thinking, and when do you like have breakfast and like, and I realized that just that question, what do you do for spiritual practice, ignited a kind of like, oh, I got to make this sound good. It's got to be big enough, important enough. And I thought I was listening to their workout schedule at the gym, you know, and not about the practices that help them, you know, in this commitment to a spiritual life. And so I think that's why I backed away from that question. What is your spiritual practice? Because, yeah, it gets overwhelming to think that this is a question that I need to impress somebody with how spiritual I am.
Hmm.
So, um, so yeah, that,
It's interesting because so many of our conversations in the course of this day have been about awakening and the movement toward, and kind of freeing up our authentic selves. That wasn't always said exactly that. I'm paraphrasing various people, but so, how do we hold our spiritual practice as elders in the light of that? Because it's not, um, it needs to be a thing that's us somehow.
okay, exactly. Yeah. So the thing that's us. Um, I often hear people say, "Oh, I can't meditate." I've tried. There's no way I can meditate. And then come to find that they walk every day and they walk, they never miss, walk every day. And to begin to ask, well, could that be that you're walking every day is your spiritual practice? And yeah, or journaling um or reading or prayer or whatever it is. But what are you already doing? I grew up in a house of where the cup of tea was the answer for everything. If you're not feeling well, oh, let's have a cup of tea. If you're having a great day, oh, that's great. Let's have a cup of tea. If you're, bored, well, let's just have a cup of tea. And it was the answer for everything. And then I began to realize that that cup of tea was my spiritual practice. And so bringing intention to the things that we're already doing and letting it penetrate into our sense of, you know, what's important in being in the world and having a healthy relationship with silence, having a learning to be in solitude and whatever that is, gazing out the window or having your cup of tea or doing a more traditional meditations, getting together with other one of our beloved interweave groups is our meditation group, being doing meditation with others. So opening up the notion of a personal spiritual practice to be more than what we might traditionally think that they are, and letting those things really feed us, uh, so that we know what it is to be deep in our hearts. We can touch that place and practice touching that place, um, of of knowing and listening to the inner voice within.
What wisdom would you impart regarding that? How do we listen for that voice that uncovers that for us?
Hmm. Well, I think one of the things that's required, or the invitation, let's say, is to examine some of the ideas and the notions of what we're talking about that you may have been taught as a child. So here we are. I'm suggesting in elderhood, this is the opportunity, the invitation to question, well, what do I believe? What is that small? Do I have a small voice within? And what was I taught as a child? And does that still make any sense to me? And so it's asking that question. That yes, the people who taught me the things that I believe is my tradition, my faith tradition, my my ballast, my the things that I return to again and again, are they still working for me? And does it still feel, to use the word you just said, authentic? And that can sometimes be a painful inquiry into, um, what is my mature sense of my spirituality? Um, and was I given things by well-meaning teachers, in my youth, that just don't feel true anymore? And that how do I re reevaluate or re-embody what all of this really means? And that is definitely one of the tasks of the elder. I wish I had a better word than mature, because the opposite sounds like immature. It's like you're making a judgment. Oh, that's immature, but ripening,
I think
maybe.
ripening is exactly the word
Right.
that sprung to mind as you said. I thought, no, it's ripening, and um, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Why
So,
does it matter right now so much, Moya? Right now in this moment, that we know how to step into this role.
right, right. You know, um, Part of this discussion of hope is that we don't know what's coming, you know. We want to be hope. We want to cultivate this idea of hope, hope against hope. We don't know what's coming. Um, but we are resourced. We have, as elders, we are resourced. We have experience. We have stories to tell. We have witnessed resilience around us in our families, you know, in our communities. We've seen great things overcome. We've heard stories about our ancestors, all of that. So we have those as resources, but we're at this threshold moment. We don't know what's coming. But in this holding both grief and gratitude, we can have the capacity to stand in the moment and say, I don't know what's coming, but I know how I want to show up.
Can you say more about what that means? I don't know what's coming.
I don't know what's coming, but I know how I want to show up.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can't answer for everybody, but you could answer for
Well,
you.
yeah, for me, as we were just saying, the commitment to spiritual practice so that I can stay in a grounded place, not in a reactive place, that I can be the gentle witness for some of the trials of the people in my life and the things that they are experiencing without necessarily, giving a lot of advice, but being able to companion someone in whatever their struggle is. And I mean that on a very personal level, but also in the anxieties of the collective anxieties, um, to be able to be witness to the collective anxieties and to at the same time stay grounded, um, in that place, so that we can all kind of become more grounded and prepared for whatever is coming, from a place of this acceptance that that it's both, that there are going to be disappointments and trials, and that we can also greet each day with gratitude.
So the elder is able to hold both the joy and the sadness. The elder remembers the our ancestry, holds that sense of ancestry. Um, Stories to tell. The elder is a storyteller. Um, what else is in the role of the elder?
I'd just stay there for a second, unpack that a little bit as the storyteller. What's the difference between the storyteller and the advice giver?
Very good.
I just recently, anybody who knows me knows I just recently became a grandmother. And oh, I didn't know anything about it.
Light up just talking about
I
it.
didn't know anything about elderhood until I became a grandmother. And in despite everything I've just said about, being the witness and not the advice giver, being the mentor and not it went out the window, and I thought that I could say to my daughter, "Oh, you should do it this way," or "Why are you doing that?" or thinking, I should say thinking, because the words never got halfway out of my mouth before I was told that's not the way we do it now, Mom. But what a lesson I learned. What a lesson I learned about hope and trust in this world, that that there are there are children coming. The young ones are here and they are coming up and they're being loved, and that in the as the role of the elder, I can hold that without an opinion as much as just an awesome holding of that as I'm watching it unfold. And it has been incredibly nourishing for me and hopeful for me to see that simultaneously there's a world where traditions are being, dismantled, and yet um, the young ones are here, and they're to be cherished and celebrated. And yeah, so stories. I feel like um, I have a longing to tell stories of the family that you realize I'm now the one holding the stories of the family,
Right.
and that it matters. Telling the stories of the family matters.
We could do a whole hour just on grandparenthood, and not that they're an absolute correlation, but certainly it is a threshold into elderhood. And you told that so beautifully. It is a learning moment. I have no control, but I can be here. That it's an extraordinary gift to have. I mean, that's all of that wisdom comes with this small person who I think we said should have t-shirts that we could just say thank you for holding the future thank you for holding the future for us. Thank you for we have there's such a sense of gratitude for these gifts from that feel these people that feel like gifts from the heavens, and all we have to do is witness to them, look at them to feel joy in their being. um yeah. So yeah, that sounds like a very big threshold to know that you're happy about something, but there's no controlling it. Wow.
Right. And
Wow.
that doesn't mean you have to be a grandmother to experience that.
Right.
It
One
is,
way.
as I say, it's a choice, it's a way of being in the world, and a practice to even just, open up and ask what other generations are thinking, what the future generations are thinking, what they're experiencing, and and how we might simply be available as someone who can listen.
So it's not about your proper way of doing diapers or your or if it's an adult person and a mentoree, somebody you're mentoring in your career, it's not about this is the way I um run this program. It's about something else.
Right. And it doesn't have to be that the this role of the elder doesn't mean that if you don't have grandchildren, you're not an elder.
No, that's why I say you're the mentoring of somebody that you work with, for example.
Right.
um so when we talked the other day, you mentioned that ritual
Right.
was
And that's the next step, I think, for me personally, from story to ritual. Because yeah, our rituals, that brings it into the realm of symbolic language, ways of experiencing the world that are not necessarily, um, thinking, but sensing and feeling. And yeah, so ritual becomes um, the piece that can sometimes be overlooked. And I'm not wagging my finger at families that are not, doing traditional sacraments or anything like that, um, but to take time to have a ritual, to mark the moments, to bring it to the community, because that is how one of the ways that hope gets cultivated through reviving ritual into our lives.
Can you tell us about, because I don't know that everyone may really know. Can you paint a picture for us about the meaning? Because I think this is so important what you're talking about. Can you paint a picture for us about what a ritual is, the meaning of and the importance of ritual?
Mm.
Is it why do we do this
You
thing?
know, I think that ritual is one of those things that it comes with the use a computer metaphor. It's part of our programming. We're born with it, you know? This if you've ever watched children play, sometimes they create little rituals for themselves. They they gather things together and they put them in a pile and then they stand around and they create a game around it and they, you know, we are natural ritual makers in my in my way of thinking. And and it has a way of a ritual has a way of creating a beginning. A ritual has a way of inviting the next step. A ritual has a way of honoring. You know, I'll give you a more concrete example. I was working as a hospice chaplain during the pandemic, and many people were not able to have rituals for their loved ones that died of COVID because we were in the middle of COVID, and how I could just see how painful that was not to be able to honor um, a loved one who had died because of what we were all experiencing. And then how quickly we created rituals, services online. And because it was a longing, the ritual was a longing that was not going to be denied. We created online services, you know, and got better and better at it. And to the point now where I'll bet you the camera at these services is going to stay so that people can tune into them and experience them. Um, so yeah, the it may be that the elder is the one who stops and says, "Wow, this is a moment to mark. Let's do this. Let's create. Let's stand in a circle. Um, let's ask the young ones to come into the circle and tell us what's on their mind. Let's ask the, you know, however the ritual gets created. Um, let's invite the ancestors to be present to whatever problem has arisen and wait for something to be to for some knot to be untied in a way that that ritual can do."
I want to say or ask about being shy about that. We can be, I guess the word would be, one could be reticent
Right.
to
Well,
to
I
say,
think this goes back to the conversation about what we were raised to think ritual meant, and how it was. It can be, you know, it needs a certain place, it needs a certain person, it needs certain words, it needs, you know, and that perhaps someone's experience of ritual didn't feel alive, you know, it felt like a relic. Um, and so it's kind of a opening that up to creativity and um, spontaneity, perhaps, and just trusting that, you know, that the ritual itself will speak. Um, so, how do you create a ritual that, you know, it's designating something that wants to be honored? Um, I'm thinking of I recently did a baby blessing in someone's living room. Um, And, we gathered, the kids were there were lots of little kids running around and they were noisy. They were climbing on their mothers and fathers' legs and we, gathered flowers. We'd sent the kids out to get stones and bring them into the center to drop them into the water that we were going to use to bless the baby. And, it just, um,
Sounds wonderful.
yeah. And but the satisfaction of acknowledging that um, that this family, this community, this group of friends, and to honor this, arrival um, of another child into the fold. Yeah, it didn't have the all of the pieces that you might have in a formal christening in a church, but um, it certainly made everyone feel secure that yes, this happened. This child was welcomed into this community, and yeah, just being a little brave to let it happen that way.
It does require, I think, a certain element of bravery because I think there's a countercultural element to marking the ground, to marking the moment. And I've seen you do it. You do it so beautifully. I can't imagine who would push that away. And yet I know that, to sometimes there's a feeling of let me break into this moment and I love that you say maybe in an untraditional way, maybe in an unexpected way. And maybe that element of surprise is what allows us to help people to go there.
Hmm.
It's wonderful.
So yeah, I think that when I realized that I could, really adopt this notion of being an elder, um, and it's a constant, it's not just something like it's not a switch I turned on, because I have to constantly be accountable to, you know, um, to my commitment to being in the world in this way. Um, you know, I still have road rage. That's not a very elderly thing. I can still get mad at the what's on the news and um but it feels like the kind of activism that I can do right now, right? So, at another stage of my life, activism might have looked different. I might have gone to a protest. I might have, um, you know, but at this stage in my life, activism feels my call to being active in the world feels different. And I know there's some that use the term subtle activism that that we can make a difference by truly being who we are, authentic, grounded, listening, mentoring, being that elder is a kind of activism.
So you've unpacked so much for us today. I'm going to ask you one more question, as I asked every panelist before they go, every guest. Where do you see hope, Moya, in your life? Where are you experiencing this or nurturing it? Where, in a word or a sentence, how is go hope making an appearance for you?
I think in the realization that I am continuing to grow and learn and continuing to um, be with the two tensions um, of grief and loss and gratitude and hope. the more I can, the more I can do that, the more I can feel that there is more to come for me in my my personal life and in how I can be in the world. So that feels like new energy, new hope, new, even in this season of Advent or the coming winter longest night, that even as each the nights are so long and we're craving the daylight, I this commitment to um, a subtle kind of subtle activism brings me great hope.
Well, it was beautiful, and I took some notes because I think you really are identifying something that needs to be shared and shared widely and deeply. I want to tell you how grateful I am for your voice, the voice of an elder, and I know it can sometimes feel like a voice in the wilderness, but what a voice, what a special voice, a unique voice, a melodious voice, that helps us even, to listen to you is something that seems to be a theme that has run through the day, something that stops you, draws you in, brings you to a different place. That sounds like it might be the work of an elder.
I am one of the I have a friend who she had an accident as a young woman and had a spinal cord injury. And she came through that experience with such, you and I, Janet, have spoken of this, of the pearl of great price. She came through that experience with all of the things that I'm talking about now, um, through that experience, and is one of the elders that I look up to. And she's um, practically old enough to be my daughter. So this sometimes we talk about old souls that we meet, and maybe it is that, you know, that sometimes we are or we are blessed to have the experience of being an elder at any time in our lives. So yeah.
Well, thank you for being a blessing. My goodness, what a day we're having. I know actually um eh, we're gonna can you stay a little while?
Yes, I'd love to.
We'd love to have you stay. I'm sure Carl would love to have you stay and talk to him for a little while. Thank you for being such an amazing guest. Wow, that was incredible. Um, and we thank you for helping us to nurture hope through the art of being an elder. And elders are very versatile. So now Moya is going to transform from a one of our conversants, our conversation sharers, our guests into the host of a turn with Carl, along with Carl, of the turn of the hour as they explain to you how important this day has been, what we've been doing, why we're doing it, and how you can help us to continue having beautiful, beautiful conversations like we've had today. Thank you, Moya.